So my name's Jacob. So I have a fitness studio which I run from home called Jan Outdoor Boutique Fitness Studio. I've just signed a contract to hire a facility at the Gardens Town Centre as well. So we'll be operating out of there during the day. But I love talking, as Lorraine knows, because she comes to my classes, and I also love to write, so I have a blog at jacobwinrow.com. But I'll go through all that as we go through this. Yeah, it's good. So you'll know if you're in the right place today. If you struggle to stay on track with health and fitness goals, you would like to lose weight, if you struggle with commitment, discipline and motivation, it doesn't need to be all of these, it might be just one or two. You would like to have more energy, you want to feel better about yourself, or you would like to have more confidence. Just keep clicking, Holly. Here's what you'll learn by hanging out today. I'm going to read through this. Normally I wouldn't do this, but this is actually taken from a webinar, so I wouldn't normally be so much reading. So the first part is from my webinar, so I will read the first part, and then trust me, it's not going to be all me just paying the service. What your biggest challenges are with health and fitness, so that you can learn how to overcome these challenges. You'll also learn what would need to happen in the next 10 weeks for you to feel as though you've overcome these challenges. What life would specifically look like in 10 weeks, and I'm just using 10 weeks as an example, if you were to overcome these challenges so that you can create goals that really matter. And last of all, your deep core purpose for your health and fitness goals, so that you develop unwavering commitment, discipline, and motivation. This training is not for you. Please don't walk out the door if this is any of you. But you're already on track with health and fitness goals and seeing results. Lorraine, I know that's not you now, but don't leave. You don't want or need to lose weight. You're committed, disciplined, and motivated to take action on your health and fitness goals on a consistent basis. You have loads of energy all the time. You already feel fantastic about yourself, particularly with your health. You feel confident about yourself in any situation, and you get upset or offended when someone, I'm supposed to leave for that one for at the end of the webinar. Should have deleted that one. Next slide. So how does knowledge, a little bit of background about me, how this knowledge has changed my life. So this is all about the mindset stuff. So I had a background in health and fitness and also education, and then that kind of evolved into a little bit of psychology as well. And what I realised was by paying attention, it was so much about psychology I needed to consider a lot more of the psychology stuff. And I'm actually, quite frankly, surprised that not a lot more health professionals, personal trainers included, but also other health practitioners are doing more of this mindset type stuff. So now I feel like I can recognise what's holding people back from making meaningful and sustainable change. I can change any part of my life that I want to so quickly and easily. I want to be more disciplined with my eating habits. I can. I want to be more committed with my training. I can. And I fall off the wagon and fall off track with my health and fitness goals just as much as anyone else. I don't get this stomach pain that I used to. I'll talk about that at this time later. Within an hour of waking up. I don't have to exercise for as long as I used to. I can maintain my ideal weight so much easier, no more fluctuating. I feel so happy and healthy all the time and have more energy than I've ever had. Quick recap of my story. So as I said, this is Holly, my wife, father of 5. 4 of our children were born in 5 years. So we have an older son who's actually my stepson, who's 15. He lives down in Victoria with his dad. And then together we have an 8-year-old, 7-year-old. What did I? Oh, yeah. 8-year-old, 7-year-old, 5-year-old, and 4-year-old. Holly and I got married last year on the 9th of June. I run 2 businesses, the local fitness classes and the online business, and Holly runs 2 businesses too, which is her Tupperware and her jewellery making. So I know what it's like to have no time, and I certainly know what it's like to have no energy. In 2006, I completed a double degree in sports science and teaching. I taught physical education for 7 years at Sanderson Middle School in Treasury Senior College from 2007 to 2013, while continuing my studies during that whole time. So in 2008, I completed my Certificate 3 in Fitness, and 2009 Cert 4 in Fitness. In 2013, I did a graduate diploma in psychology and then went on to teach year 11 and 12 psychology at CSC, both of my 2 former high schools. In 2012, I took a role as a health and physical education advisor to the Department of Education. In 2016, I worked at the NC Institute of Sport, developing and managing, facilitating the Move More Learn More research project and program. In 2017, I was offered a part-time contract with them, coaching coaches and developing movement confidence. And this is where the whole movement confidence side of things really took off for me. Also in 2017, I was offered a position at CDU to lecture, and I was teaching 5 classes of health and physical education. In Until the age of 13, I was a chubby little kid despite being very active and sport orientated. Over the 6-week Christmas school holidays, I undertook my own training program. Over there at Mark Oval, actually, is where my whole training program started. I just started running laps. And I didn't realise at the time that I was actually beginning that process of all the mindset strategy stuff accidentally. I started to sort of fall into it. I returned to school in 1997, a new person, physically and emotionally. That school holiday was the changing course of my life forever. Since then, I've been obsessed with health and fitness, and I've wanted to help others achieve their health and fitness goals. Everything I've ever undertaken since that moment has been related to mind and body, health and fitness, and helping other people. So fast forward today, I'd like to talk about three probably. I don't like to point out because everyone is a success story, and everyone is very dear to my heart. But there's three people that really stand out, particularly the top one and the last one. So the first one was a lady who I was running a boot camp down at Sanderson, and she had these issues with going to sleep at night, and something just wasn't right. She knew something wasn't right, and she went along to a testing that I think it was CDU students were running, and she had some different testing done, and the doctors kept saying it was asthma, and this testing was around, I think, the heart, and what that testing ended up finding out was that she actually had some kind of heart failure, which was hereditary, and if she didn't keep persisting over that 12 to 15 month period, she probably would have passed away. So she was in her late 50s at the time, and the doctors said that attending that regular fitness training and the way we were doing it really kept her alive during that time. So she is the one who sticks out in my mind as the most memorable person I've ever worked with. Lee's another one who comes to the classes at the moment, but faces hamstring injuries, shoulder problems. We did a session 2 weeks ago while we were on our health retreat in Bali, and he couldn't even lift his arms above his head, let alone hang. And he did like all these like brace things. It was amazing. And then Jake's an autistic boy with developmental delay. He couldn't even tie his own shoelaces. There was a lot of things he couldn't do without sitting down specifically working on tying shoelaces. He got that motor control to be able to do so. So him tying shoelaces is the most exciting thing for me. Everything changed the moment I learned how to develop my movement properly and chose psychology as a way to lose weight or help get on track with health and fitness goals. That's me. If I can do it and any of my clients can do it, so can you. We're not different in any way. And even though we may be ahead of you in the habits that we've created, none of us are energetically committed, obsessively disciplined, or motivated all the time. So a couple of things to keep in mind over the rest of this hour. Get out of your own way. It's about taking action, simple, actionable steps, and taking a very next actionable step. I'll talk a bit more about that later on. Perfection is your enemy. You need to develop momentum first. So, how to get on track with your health and fitness goals. So this is where I want to sit down and have a conversation with you and ask you what your biggest challenge is with health and fitness right now. So, Kate, I might start with you.
Just the motivation to start, I think.
Motivation? Yep. What would you say, Lorraine?
Before I started, I'd say finding the right place where you fit. Sometimes you go other places and you sort of just don't fit. You might know the routine, you might exercise every bit of my biggest challenge is finding something that I actually fit my abilities.
Yeah, cool. So motivation, finding the right place. Penny, I was just saying, what's your biggest challenge with health and fitness right now? Because I want to make this as much of a conversation as possible, and make it really individualised. And if you need to take off, feel free to take off. But we're not gonna. I'll keep talking so that you can get your cough under control. But we're not going to be able to go through everything. But if we just pick the number one thing, that gives us a starting point.
Well, right now I'm just doing the sports team, so that's fun. So I'm kind of achieving my goals at the moment, but historically I think we need to just keep up the momentum and the discipline really. And yeah, I guess I just want to have some things that fitness be part of my everyday life. Because I've got a daughter and probably have another child soon, so we're going to be out of action for pole sports and other sports in the foreseeable future. And yeah, I just want to get that mindset of fitness being part of my everyday life.
Yeah, cool. It's funny that you say momentum and stuff, motivation. motivation is probably the number one thing. So to give you a bit of a background, I surveyed my email list a couple of years ago, and I said, what's your biggest challenge with health and fitness? And everyone said staying on track with health and fitness goals, which is ultimately what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I was talking to a friend of mine who was from the States, and I just met her at a workshop just before that, and she was very successful in fitness. And she goes, and I was real excited. I said, I've got the answer. They've all told me, because she told me to ask the question. And I said, I've got the answer. They've all said stay on track. She goes, that's great, Jacob, but you've just got a Henry Ford answer. So after having to Google what a Henry Ford answer was and finding out that, you know, if he asked everyone what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, and he would have tried to make these like super duper horses. But he was the innovator and ended up creating the car. So she said, you need to do the same thing. So go back to them and say, where would you need to be in, say, 3 to 4 months in order to feel like you've stayed on track? So that's where we're going to go with that. So keep that answer in mind. Everyone, and you can flick through, everyone who, when I did ask that, and they said staying on track, their next response was to lose 10 kilos. And then beyond that, the people who wanted to talk a bit more in their emails and give a bit more information typically said, I struggle, and there was 3 things: commitment, discipline, and motivation. And motivation is definitely number one. So what would life specifically look like if, what would need to happen in the next, say, I like to use 10 weeks. But if it's 10 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or whatever, if you had overcome that challenge of motivation, finding the right spot, so you know what it looks like now, and having that momentum, making it a regular part of your life, what would life specifically look like? What would need to happen for you to feel like you had overcome that? So I'll start with you, Kate.
Right, like, we don't have to change quite a lot of my life. Yeah, just have to start creating habits and so on.
Yeah.
And what specifically what I did, so it's just exercising a bit more in the morning or in the afternoon.
So it would look like exercise.
Yes.
If you would overcome that challenge of motivation, it would look like you doing exercise.
Yeah. I think like baby steps, as you're
Yep.
talking about, like walking around the block, something to start with, walking and going with
Perfect. I think you're going to like where we're going with this. Penny?
what would it look like? It'd probably be looking like 3 fairly big sessions a week. Yeah. Every week.
And Lorraine?
Oh, well, I'm looking at that, right?
Yep.
And I go 5 days a week. Take in the morning. I first show when you're 9 o'clock, I say 4:45, but it just sits me up for a little bit. Yeah, and I just love it. And I might look like I go 5 days a week, but I know that I'm doing progress.
I very recently discovered more exercise session, which is hair.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So do I. It's great.
Now I do find it's
Yeah, morning rituals and routines are so valuable for setting up, particularly morning exercise. Okay, so just with that in mind, complete this sentence. So in order for you to feel like you've said the biggest challenge is blah, blah, blah. In order for you to feel like you'd overcome that, you know what life would look like. Sometimes, the reason why I look in the mirror is sometimes people struggle with that. And I say, well, look in the mirror, and if it's depends on where they're going. So there's a few different questions you can ask. But typically you get the answer in those 2. So from there, I want you to ask so Kate, your biggest challenge is motivation, and it would, to know that you'd overcome that challenge of being motivated to exercise, you would be exercising on a regular basis, going for a walk every couple of days. I might actually use your example because yours is really tangible and specific. So 3 days a week of a solid session, say 1 hour session, 3 days a week. So that, I want you to ask so that, and then I want you to tell me what the answer is. And I'm going to keep saying so that. Don't think I'm trying to push you and be weird, but I'm going to keep saying so that. So I'll start with you, Penny.
yeah. So that my recovery from that exercise session isn't
So recovery is quicker, so that, like, what would be the purpose of that?
So that I know then that I'm really fit.
Yeah.
So that.
And how would that make you feel?
You're saying so then, yeah.
So how would that make you feel?
It would make me feel like I will be fit as I get older.
Yep. And being fit as you get older, how would that make you feel?
Like I would have a better chance of enjoying life later on down the track.
Yep. And what's the purpose of being able to enjoy your life later on down the track?
So that I can enjoy my friends and family.
Yep. And enjoying your friends and family will give you what?
Joy.
Joy. So we got to an emotion. So I kind of tried to speed the process up by going a couple of questions back to an emotion. Eventually you would have got there. Typically what you'll get to is an emotion. If you keep asking it,
Okay.
you'll dive
You're
down.
expecting that.
Yeah, I knew, normally it's happiness. Normally it's happy. So I feel happy.
Right.
And I'll just
Oh,
leave it for you to go through.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there is different things that people would say. And so when I surveyed the list, what they said was, it all came down to, so first of all, it was challenge was staying on track. So how would you know that you'd achieved that? I'd be 10 kilos lighter. That's what everyone said, I'd lose 10 kilos. I was like, what is with this 10 kilos? Everyone needs to lose 10 kilos. And even if you need to lose 20 or 30 kilos, they would still say 10 kilos. If they need to lose 5, they'd say 10 kilos.
Yeah.
So honestly, it was more than 90% of people said 10 kilos. And even the North American subscribers said like 30 pounds,
30, 40 pounds.
which was about 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was 25 to 30 pounds is what they were saying. So I was like, oh man, there's something in this. And then so I then said so that. And what people said was so that I have more energy and I feel better about myself. The two things that come up. And ultimately, those two is all about happiness. So having more energy, feeling better about myself. And after that, what's come in the last couple of years has been increasingly confidence. So I feel more confident about myself. And so what you end up getting to is you'll end up asking that question and you'll go through all these reasons, so you end up going to the end of your life, so that when you get older, like I can enjoy it. I feel like I was like thinking you were going to say enjoy my grandkids and sit on my chair and
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
be able to get out of it. And honestly, so many people who come to my classes, that's what they say.
Well, I feel like I
It's
enjoy my daughter now. I just want to make sure that I'll still enjoy it all.
It's like, it's freaky. Everything, it all generally comes back to the same thing. And eventually it gets to an emotion, and you'll end up looping around that same emotion. And so that's when you need to stop. And I did start to ask the question a bit differently, how that make you feel, for what purpose, so that it's all the same kind of thing. So we'll go to the next one. So this gets into the teaching stuff a little bit now. So if you want to ask a question, please just jump in and just start chatting. So this goes into basic human psychology, which is all about thinking, feeling, and behaving. Every behaviour is preceded by feeling, which is preceded by thought. Now, you might say, I know some people, particularly some boys out there, that don't think before they act. I guarantee you there's a feeling in there and there's a thought. It might be subconscious, or it might be super fast that they don't realise it, unless it's like instinct. Outside of instinct, every other behaviour is preceded by thought. So if a behaviour is negative, then you can bet your bottom dollar that it's a negative feeling, which was before that, and a negative thought. And the thought always comes before. Sometimes it's so fast that you think, oh, there was a feeling, I felt angry, so I thought I'm going to do this and then I behave this way. There is a thought first, which comes before the feeling. It's just often subconscious if it's really fast and it's not an instinct. So we have thinking, feeling, behaving. If it's a positive behaviour, then there's a positive feeling and positive thought. If you want to change a behaviour from negative to positive, you just need to change the thought, so the thought pattern, and that takes a little bit of just practice to start, first of all, recognising that behaviour and then go, okay, what did I think before I did that? What did I feel before I did that? These are the feelings I had, so I behaved in a way where I lashed out and I yelled at somebody because they cut me off. I beat my horn and I was like, in the car because someone cut me off. So there was a feeling of like annoyance, anger, frustration. The thought was, how dare you, that's dangerous, you're an idiot, you shouldn't have done that. So how could I behave if I wanted to more positively and be calm? Well then, let's go back to what is a positive thought that I could have. Maybe it was a man driving and his wife is having a baby, she's in labour, and he needs to get to the hospital as quick as he can. Maybe that person driving is, trying not to call them silly, but whatever other reason there is, maybe they're just they're in a rush to get somewhere. And yes, it is very dangerous that they're doing that, but maybe it's a really important appointment or whatever. And so now checking with those feelings. Those feelings are generally now positive. Like, oh, okay, it's still dangerous, but I can see where they're coming from. He's trying to get his wife to the hospital to deliver their baby. I feel happy for them. They're about to have a baby. I'm still a bit annoyed, but now my behaviour is completely different. And the other thing, which Tony Robbins talks about, and I love Tony Robbins, Anthony Robbins, the motivational speaker, if you haven't heard of him. I call him Uncle Tony because I talk about him so much in my videos and vlogs. And he's had such a profound impact on my life. But he says we all move towards pleasure and away from pain a lot. He's not the first one to say it, he won't be the last. He's not the only one, but that's basic human psychology. We always move towards something which we feel pleasuring, and we move away from something which we have pain associated to. And we'll do a hell of a lot more to avoid pain than what we will to gain pleasure. So keep that in mind as we go through. So what is behaviour? Go through these real quick on this. So what is behaviour? The way in which one acts or conducts oneself, especially towards others, is a dictionary meaning. We don't need to worry too much about that. It can be classified in one of two ways: a routine and a habit. So we'll go through these. A routine is a behaviour which is frequent. So we've got our frequent behaviour from low to high, and a habit is a behaviour which is automatic. So that's the difference. So we've got our behaviours on its own. A single behaviour is just a behaviour. When we do it frequently, we do it all the time, like brushing our teeth, it becomes a routine. When we do it automatically, like we take the same route to work every day, and it's just goes down Lee Point Road, and we go down to McMillan's Road to the lights there at Marara. But then one day, on a Sunday, we want to go to Nightcliff Markets, and we end up turning down Trout Road, and we miss that turn off and we keep going because we're in the zone. So that's a habit. A habit is we're automatically driving to work. I'll talk more about that in a second, but we go again. Habits are all about automaticity of behaviour, and we go from low to high. So here's 4 different types that we can classify this. So we've got a routine, but not a habit. So an example is, the routine is we have an omelette for breakfast every single morning, but it's not a habit. We don't do it automatically. We don't just get up and automatically start making an omelette, but we have an omelette every single morning. So we've also got a habit, but not a routine. So we've got routine, but not a habit, and a habit, but not a routine. So that's parking. So something which we do automatically with the one I just gave just then is sort of an example. So parking in the same spot every time we go to the shop. So if we go up to North Lakes shops and we turn the same direction each time we go in, we park in the same spot if it's available or the same area, then that's a habit. It's not routine, we don't do it all the time, we don't do it every day. We may not even do it every week, but every time we go there, it's a habit for us to go in that direction towards that area of the car park. I certainly know I do the same thing.
It's like a mess with the car is. Nothing worse than panicking when you can't find it.
Walking around just thinking.
Yeah.
So we've got not a routine and not a habit. So example, big life choices. This is like a career change. Should I resign from my job? I've done something for 11 years and it's time for a change. Should I resign or not? Should I apply for this job or not? So it's something which, that's just a behaviour. It's not a routine or a habit. And our last one is both a habit and a routine. An example is typically brushing your teeth before bed. I know for me, it's sort of an automatic behaviour before I go to bed to walk in and brush my teeth. Another automatic behaviour for me is to have a drink of water in the morning. The first thing I do, I have a cup beside the bed. As soon as I wake up, I have a glass of water. That initially was a routine. Initially, I created a routine to do that through going through the 4 E's, the ecosystem of routine, which I'll talk about. And then from there, I just got so used to it because it was frequent that it automatically became a habit. And there's different ways, so click to the next one, there's different ways that we can create a habit. So how long, go back again, how long does it take to create a habit? People, actually I'll ask you that question, how long do you think it takes?
Anywhere between 21 and 300 days.
Yep.
I was going to say 3 months.
Yep.
What was that, sorry?
How long do you think it takes to create a habit?
Yeah, I would say 3 to 6 months.
Yep. So it's generally about 3 months, yeah. And there's a whole heap of research around it to say that it does take that long to create a habit. But it is not like a habit goes ting, and it's like a light bulb going on, and now all of a sudden it's a habit. It's a progressive journey. So behaviour change experts, ones that I like to read anyway. So for example, a guy by the name of E.J. Fogg, who works out of Stanford University and is probably the world leader in behaviour modification, says that there's no particular time frame for creating a habit. A habit can be created in a second, and it's all about emotion. So emotion is the number one driving factor in creating a habit. It is very hard to create the habit of exercise out of emotion, however. An example of creating a habit out of emotion is you're driving in the car with your 2-year-old child, and just say you're doing something in particular and there's a massive crash. I guarantee that is going to change your habits around driving. So let's just say you were, changing the CD. You were changing the, you grabbed your phone and you were changing a podcast you were listening to on your phone, look up and you're driving to the back of a Mack truck and you crash the car. You are probably going to change your habits next time you jump in the car around getting on your phone. And very unlikely that you are going to use that. I'll give you an example from my grandma. She smoked from the age of 7. She used to smoke the cigarette butts that her dad would leave until she was 50. She walked in, she went for a checkup when she was in her 50s, so she smoked for about 40 plus years. Walked in, and I'd just been born, and the doctor said, you need to give up smoking. If you don't give up smoking, you are not going to see your grandchildren grow up. And at the time, I was the first one of 7 born, and the only one at the time. She walked out, threw the cigarettes in the bin, never smoked again. It was a highly emotional state for her to modify a habit. So the first one is an example of no longer getting on your phone. Some people might still. Plenty of people don't change their habits when the doctor tells them that you need to stop eating a certain way or you're going to have a heart attack, and they continue to do it. But if it is emotional enough for you and you have those values, then a habit can be changed in an instant. When it comes to this type of stuff, however, it's very unlikely that you are going to create that emotional attachment. People in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, will argue that you can, and you certainly can. You can create it through, psychologists can do it through their counselling stuff, through NLP stuff. You can do all that stuff. There's plenty of pretty cool life coaches out there that can do stuff like that. But the best way is to live it. So when it comes to creating a habit of exercise, we need to do it intelligently and step by step by creating the routines first. When it comes to the 21 days to the 300-day type thing, that it becomes more and more stronger. We build momentum, and it becomes a stronger pattern of behaviour. We reinforce that behaviour. So first we must establish a routine in order to create a habit. So introducing the ecosystem of a routine. This is the 4 E's. If you've got paper and pen, please get this out and write this down. So we've got 4, so effectiveness, ease, efficiency, and environment. They're the 4 factors that are important in creating any routine. So I said you like this stuff from what you said. This is it. So just click to the next one. So step 1 is effectiveness. So when you are creating the habit of exercise is actually what I consider and call a macro behaviour. Because there's many little micro behaviours which go into it in order to create that. So for you to get up and go to fitness class, for example, in the morning, there's all these little micro behaviours. So get your clothes out probably the night before. Set your alarm the night before. Go to bed at a certain time. When the alarm goes off, turn it off. Second behaviour, a separate behaviour to that, get out of bed. Next behaviour to that, get dressed. Next behaviour, walk outside and get in the car. Drive to where you're going. They're all little behaviours which need to add up. And eventually, once we do enough of them, it's like a domino. We knock enough of them over, we get some momentum, we end up getting there. So actually getting to the class requires there's all these little, what you can see is there's all these little obstacles along the way, but you can stop. The first one is the hardest, is turning the alarm off. Next one's hard, getting out of bed. Next one's hard, getting dressed. It's so easy at any of those times to get back into bed or to not get out of bed in the first place. So when it comes to using psychology to modify your behaviours, it's important that we go through these 4 E's ecosystem of routines. So the first one is effectiveness. So first thing, pretty self-explanatory, create routines that are linked to the goals you're currently working on. So if your goal is to get on track with health and fitness goals because you want to lose weight or you want to train for a particular event or you want to be fitter and healthier, you want to be able to have a more fulfilling life, then it's no good making the behaviour going and, doing something completely different. I'm trying to think of an example. So I'll get specific. I'll talk about losing weight. People relate to losing weight, even though that may not be your goal. Losing weight is very easy. So let's just say we want to lose 10 kilos. So losing 10 kilos, going to a stretching class is not going to probably get you there. Yeah, it's great. There's plenty of health benefits to a stretching class, really low impact, and just sitting there and doing stretches. But it's not going to really help you lose any weight. A little bit, but you're going to have to do other parts of it. You're going to have to do some low, moderate, and high intensity exercise, or maybe low, depending on where you're at. Change your eating habits, all that kind of thing. So don't get me wrong, stretching is certainly very good. So, I've got the example here. 30 minutes of HIIT training is linked to the goal of losing 5 centimetres from your hip circumference. While good for you, 30 minutes of stretching is not. So the next one, step 2, is ease. So the minimum amount of effort, your behaviours need to require the minimum amount of effort for you to slip into that routine. So trying to do something. So for example, let's say you want to exercise in the afternoon, and you finish work at 4:21 in the city, and you want to go and do a class which is at 7 p.m. That is not an easy behaviour to slip into, because there's a big gap there in time. If you go, what's going to be easier for you to slip into is to go straight there from work. So finding a class that starts at 4:30, for example, so you can drive straight there. If you go home, it's going to make it obviously a lot harder. So working out in the morning. So working out in the morning is easy, because once you get yourself out of bed, there's no distractions. All day, if you're exercising in the afternoon, you can be saying to yourself, "Oh, I don't feel like it," and you come up with all these reasons why you don't do it. And
Why you change yours?
No, but I found that to be true.
Yeah,
That I
yeah.
have.
Step 3 is efficiency, so being prepared to take action on your routine. This is getting your clothes out the night before. Even if you're exercising in the afternoon, get your clothes out the night before. There's an example. So don't try and get your clothes out in the morning. First of all, you're probably going to really piss your partner off, because you've got the light on, you're fumbling around looking for clothes. So getting your clothes out the night before just means that you've made the behaviour easier to slip into, as well as you've been efficient, you're being prepared to take action on that. And I'll talk about very quickly a little 5-day challenge thing, which I get some people to do. And last one is environment, so establish reminders. So this is, for example, vision boards and things like that. Post images around your house of exercise. If it is to lose 5 centimetres off your waist or hips or whatever, or lose 10 kilos, then having junk food in the fridge is the environment. You're not hacking your environment very well, you're making it very difficult for yourself. So stacking your fridge full of heaps of vegetables. I'll talk more about this stuff in a second, but it's really important that we establish reminders around the home. So having photos up of what's going to remind us of what our goals are, having our kitchen sort of made over so that it helps us be conducive to that. Buying a new wardrobe. Holly went and just had a $400 voucher for Lorna Jane and went and bought all this new stuff. She's at the process at the moment of creating new habits around exercise, and she hasn't asked me for any of this stuff, but she went and bought all these new clothes. But that's an example. Having a new wardrobe helps to motivate you, because you've got you're hacking your environment, and you've got all these new clothes that you want to wear. So you want to go and exercise. So all of a sudden you're feeling more motivated to go and exercise. All right, so just to recap, I won't go through it again because I'm already in line. Do you guys mind if we go to bed past 5 o'clock? Is that okay? Yeah, cool.
In case you're playing tomorrow at night.
You know how much I talk.
Been here before.
Alright, and that leads us into the cycle of a habit. So we've got, as I said, behaviours, and they can be classified as routines and habits. So we've gone through the ecosystem of routine and what we need to do to create a new routine. Now we're going to go into the cycle of a habit. So a cycle of a habit starts off with a trigger. There's a contextual cue. Something triggers a behaviour. Remember, these are behaviours which are now automatic. From there, we go into a behaviour or an action, which more often than not is a routine. It's often, this is where the routine comes from. If we can create the routine, it sits in this part of the cycle of a habit in the journey. So then eventually what happens if we keep repeating it, because we have a routine, which we have a behaviour, or these micro behaviours which lead into the macro behaviour of exercise. Once we then do that repetitively, and we've done it for a few weeks, it becomes a routine. But each time we have the behaviour, we get a reward. So we get this serotonin, endorphins, dopamine sort of rush. So we get this good feeling. The particularly as you start to get results, people say, wow, you look like you're losing weight, you look like you're looking really healthy, oh, your face has changed, you look different. You get all that positive reinforcement. Again, we move towards pleasure. So even though it might be painful to do all that stuff, if we can tap in to the reason why we want to do stuff, which is why we asked so that, and we dive down deep into our actual, so most of our thinking is done with the head, but it's really important to also think with the heart. So when we can connect the head with the heart in terms of goal setting, then it makes the whole process so much more fun and more likely that we're going to succeed dramatically. So we end up with a reward, and then that's like the fuel for the fire, which kicks the whole cycle on. That reward is super important. Having that reward after the individual exercise, but also rewarding yourself and extrinsically as well, externally, maybe going and buying new clothes, or even better if it is losing weight, then you have to go and buy new clothes. So the order of ease. So the order of ease for modifying any behaviour, whether that be a routine or a habit, goes, number one, continue. Continue doing what you're already doing. So I'm going to ask you, whatever your goal is, whether it is to lose weight or it's to just start exercising or whatever it might be, what do you do now, as silly as it might sound, which is conducive for that? What would you say, Lorraine? Turn up. So you're already exercising, so yeah. What would you say, Penny?
My running shoes are at the front door.
Yes.
So I just walk past them all the time.
Yeah.
Doesn't make me run
Yeah.
very often. But
But you're not doing it, so what are you doing right now?
exercise ones.
In terms of any physical activity?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm doing half run
Yep.
on Saturday mornings, and just started doing local Wednesdays.
Yeah, cool, perfect. And what are you doing? So, do you mind me asking where you work? Like,
Yeah, working in an office job. So
office? Do you
so I
drive?
do walk around the
Yeah.
office, but
But do you drive to work?
yeah.
How far would you have to walk from your car to your office? From the car to the office?
Yeah.
Man, you must be the CEO.
Yeah.
I've never got the car park that close.
Yeah.
Man, I worked at Harbour View Plaza. We had to park in the sand pit down the bottom. So that's the level I want you to go back to. We all do something. You walk from your car into here. That is physical activity. You're doing something. No matter how inactive you think you might be, everyone does something. So I want you to start with that. I want you to go, and it might not be that small. It might be a little bit more. You're already doing a park run. That's something quite big. That's quite advanced, actually, to be doing that as well as your netball. So continue doing what you're doing. There's two reasons for that. One is it gives you acknowledgement that you are actually doing something right now, even if it is walking from your car to your office. I'm going to use the example of you have to walk upstairs. You've got an old building that doesn't have a lift, and so you've got one flight of stairs, for example. So you walk up that flight of stairs. Actually, that comes up in the next one. I won't get into that one just yet. So acknowledge that you're already doing something, and it gives you a starting point. It gives you a reference point to begin with. For example is, you can't grow leaves on a tree without branches. They're not just going to float around in space. That's not growing the leaves off a tree. That's just leaves falling off a tree and blowing around in the wind. So in order for a tree to grow leaves, it needs a trunk, it needs branches, it needs twigs, and then it gets the leaves. So we need something for our behaviours to attach to. So continuing is the start. So give yourself acknowledgement that you're doing something, even if it is simply walking from the car to the office or whatever it might be. Then from there we can do more of that. And it has to be more in the moment. You can probably click through because I think I continue doing what you already do, which is conducive to your outcome goal. So do more what you already do. So think intensity and duration. If you already go for a walk with a friend on a Tuesday afternoon at 6 p.m, it is not about saying, I'm going to do a second walk with my friend, because now there's a whole new sequence of micro behaviours which needs to lead into you. You need to change your calendar around in order to start walking with her at 6 o'clock on Thursday. So what we want to do is think intensity and duration. How can we do more in that moment? And so it might be that intensity, we just walk a little bit faster. Normally we walk, say, along Nightcliff foreshore from the jetty up to the bridge and back again. So generally that takes us, say, 30 minutes. I don't know an example. Generally it takes about an hour. So we're going to walk a little bit faster and see if we can make it back in 15 minutes. The other way you might look at it is duration, so go a bit further. So instead of going to the To the bridge, we might go a little bit further around to, I don't want to go too far, but an example would be down the Trail Road and back. But you might just go an extra 50, 100 metres beyond that and walk back. In terms of the office example, walk up the stairs, you're already doing that. So in the moment, walk back down the stairs and back up again. People might think you're crazy, but that's an example of how you would do it for a really simple behaviour. This is when starting something new. So going to a fitness class is actually a bit advanced. So going to parkrun for the first time, starting with a netball team, starting with a fitness class, going to a gym, whatever it might be. This is where most people try to start. And with the 5 steps here, just say there's 5 rungs on a ladder to get onto the roof. We want to get onto the roof. So what most people do is they try and jump up onto the 3rd rung and then climb the rest of the way up. And I wonder why they can't get on track with health and fitness goals. Because it's so big of a jump on that first one. So what we want to do is to try and go progressively nice and slow and go with the first one. So first of all, give yourself acknowledgement of what you're doing and build upon that. Once we do that, we've now got some momentum. Because through that, through that momentum, we go, okay, so we're starting with this behaviour and we're continuing doing what we're doing. We do a little bit more of that. So we go with intensity, we go a bit faster, duration, we go a bit further. And so we've now started to develop, so we've done that a couple of times and we've got some momentum now, which when we get momentum, what happens is we then get a feeling of motivation. So we get this little burst of motivation, which motivation is generally serotonin and endorphins, particularly serotonin, as well as dopamine. And dopamine isn't so much a feel-good chemical, it's a binding chemical. So it doesn't, because it's released at the same, it's also released with negative chemicals like cortisol, which is a stress hormone, so it's released at the same time, and so it then binds us to then want to do those behaviours more. So dopamine isn't necessarily a really good chemical, it just comes out at the same time as those good chemicals, but also the bad chemicals. So it helps us to bind and want to do more of that behaviour. So what we've done is we've then created momentum and then we're then getting motivation. What most people do is they start off really motivated and inspired. They're like, you know what, I'm going to get it. It's January 1. I hate to use New Year's example, but it's such a problem. It might be that you look in the mirror one day and you go, man, I hate the way I look in the mirror. And then that's the motivation. What you've done is you just grab yourself a bucket and you just pour that bucket up all the way up to the top. Another bucket example, I love my bucket example. So you poured it all the way up to the top. Then you go, I'm going to go out and I'm going to sign up. So you go and look online, Google fitness classes Darwin. You find, of course, you find Jan Fitness, and then you find Edge Health Clubs, you find HG boot camps, and you find, I don't know who else is there around, and you find CrossFit. And so you're, all right, I like all these, I'm going to sign up. You sign up with, just say it's with a CrossFit. And so you then go along and you then join that class and you find, it's a bit hard and all that kind of thing, and you feel strained, but you're feeling motivated, and then you go back the next day, sore, tired, you go back the next day, sore, tired. Eventually, after a few weeks, you end up losing what you've been doing. Every time you go, is you tip that water out of that bucket, that little bit of motivation water out of that bucket every time. And if you don't continually replenish that, then eventually the motivation bucket is empty. And then usually it's around that 3 to 4 week period. Funnily enough, I'll talk about that in a second with what's happening. But you have then run out of motivation. So what you need to do is if you go through progressively and do more of these things, you do it intelligently, and you can do this all on your own, by first of all acknowledging what you're already doing, so you get that motivation, you know what, I'm feeling good, I'm already doing that, I feel motivated. And then you then do a little bit more of that, so now you start to promote momentum, you're continuing to put some water into that bucket. So then as you start to have those little challenges which will inevitably arise, you then are continually putting it in, and then you then start with something. Some people can just jump straight in. They've got enough motivation that they can jump straight in and do it, as long as they've got a good coach working with them, whoever it is, whether it is at a gym or at boot camp or a fitness studio, whatever it might be. Let's move on to the next one. So you may have noticed the first 3 in terms of the order of ease for changing what is now, we're not creating a habit, we're modifying a habit, because the first 3 are all about doing more. They're all about creating a habit. The next 2 are all about eliminating habits. So do less of what you already do. So if you eat 2 scoops of ice cream at night, you might then start eating 1 scoop of ice cream. Move on to the next one, which is stopping. It is the most difficult habit to change. So stop doing something. So example, stop eating ice cream altogether. So giving up something cold turkey, like smoking, drinking, even soft drinks, alcohol, whatever it might be, eating ice cream. So what it's suggested in terms of behaviour modification is start to get some wins on the board first. So do the things that are creating. So if you want to lose weight, for example, don't go and say, I'm going to stop. You can, it's not just a science, it's also an art. You sort of need to be playing a little bit with both. So you can certainly go, you know what, I'm just going to chuck all the unhealthy food out. That is no problem. But what is highly desirable is to start doing more of the things that are conducive to your goals. So in terms of nutrition, continue doing what you're doing. Look at what you're already doing well. So you might have a really poor diet that consists of, I don't know, let's just say plain Weet Bix with some sugar on top for breakfast and milk, which, you know, not a lot of nutrient factor in that. It's just pure carbohydrate, pretty much in that. Then for lunch you have, I'll make it really simple. For lunch you have McDonald's and for dinner you have KFC. So pretty unhealthy food. So, but for afternoon tea you eat an apple already. Every day you have an apple for afternoon tea. Continue doing what you're already doing. So acknowledge that you are doing something. Then once you've done that, and it might only be about a week of doing that, just, you know, or it might even just be a day, you might just acknowledge it. Yeah, okay, this is where I'm going to start. That gives you a point to start from. That's your branch, your tree. And so then you start doing more of that. So I'm going to now have an orange as well at morning tea time, or I'm going to have, maybe you don't want to go overload with fruit, but let's just say we're going to do more of that. So we're going to now start eating some vegetables. So have some more broccoli, have some more cauliflower, have some more spinach, whatever it might be. So you start to do more, and then you then start to really change your habit. Before you start eliminating those bad ones, so before you start trying to reduce ice cream, alcohol, soft drink, whatever it might be. Because if you can get those feelings of success on the board, you've then got that momentum, you're feeling motivated, you're feeling good about yourself, and it's going to be a lot easier with the bottom two to start doing less and stopping those things. Nutrition is the easiest way to describe that. Does that make sense? So, let's then put this into practice. Regardless of what your goal is, by having a goal, you're saying you want to change something about yourself, you want to be a better version of yourself, and whether you achieve your goal or not, it really doesn't matter. Goal setting is about moving towards being the person you want to be and living the life you want to live. All that requires a change in your behaviours. If you keep doing what you're doing, you keep getting the same results. If you want something different, you must change your routines and habits. So, with what we now know about the order of simplicity for habit modification, what behaviours do you already do that can be considered conducive to your goals? So I've already gone through and asked you that. I just want to quickly see what these other slides are going to talk about, and then I want to let's do more of that. So be careful about starting something new, as I said. If you already do a 1 hour walk, you know, continue to do more in terms of intensity and duration next. So in summary, I'll leave that up. That's done. Keep going. There's 5 there. 2 more. All right. So so I kind of alluded to. I was talking about when after a couple of weeks. So after a couple of weeks of exercise, you start to lose the habit. So what actually happens? And any chance to talk about neurotransmitters and stuff, I get super excited. But what happens, so these people who discovered this actually won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. So what actually happens, and usually, I won't say it yet. So when we are, if I go back to what I was saying about starting new behaviours, and so let's just say we go, all right, I'm feeling motivated, I look in the mirror, I don't like what I see, I'm deciding I'm going to go and I'm going to start training. I'm going to join a gym, I'm going to join whatever, I'm going to do something about it. So your bucket is full. So people then go and they start exercising. What happens is we have this neurotransmitters, which look like this. Oh, it's going to be hard to see. So a neurotransmitter. So this is a neuron. This is a neuron. A neuron is a nerve cell. There's a little bit of chemistry here. So hopefully I can make it make sense. And understand it. If there's any questions, please ask. So when we start exercising, as I said, we get this rush. With the most famous one is endorphins. People go, "Yep, I understand that." You know, we've got we all know that we get endorphins when we exercise. We also get serotonin and dopamine as well. And so they can be both hormones and neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters work in the nervous system from neuron to neuron, and hormones work in the endocrine system, which is hormones. So the nervous system sends a signal like a phone call. From me, I pick up my phone and I call someone else. And so it's a message sent from one person to the next. The endocrine system, in terms of hormones, is like a radio broadcast. So I sit inside a radio studio, speak behind the microphone, and my message is blasted out to everyone in Darwin. So anyone is tuned into my program can hear me. So these neurotransmitters, so serotonin and endorphins can, I don't know enough about it, but they can be both a hormone and a neurotransmitter. And so when they're being sent, when the signals are being sent from neuron to neuron, what happens is we're used to getting all of these little, let's just say they're triangles of serotonin. I'm just going to break it down. I only talk about serotonin because it's the main feel-good chemical. So they come down and they get sent down here, and we have these little receptor sites. So as it goes through, we have these receptor sites for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the serotonin. And so as they come into this space here, which is called the synaptic cleft, through there, it's just empty space. This is all within, this is from cell to cell. This is happening millions of times throughout the body. They then end up sitting in this space. So they come out, those 5, 3, 4, and 5. They sit in that space, and there's these little doors here. And these doors are like nightclubs with a bouncer. These are all bouncers, and they're like, these guys come in, they're like, hey, we want to come to the party, it's, midnight, we want to get in before lockout. And so these bouncers go, yeah, no worries, open the door, come in. That's your operating level of what's happening in your nervous system. You're used to, each nerve cell is used to sending and receiving that amount of that neurotransmitter. And so the body, the cells within the body are always listening in and adapting to the messages which you're sending. So when you're sending the same amount, you do the same routines on a daily basis. It's sending this message and it goes, yep, and the body loves what's called homeostasis. Keeping things normal, it doesn't want to change. Again, NLP people will argue, it does want to change. It does, the body wants to keep it as it is because it wants to be able to protect itself if it needs to. It wants to know what's going to happen on a daily basis as much as possible, because if something which is different occurs, that's danger, that could potentially spell danger to us. If a lion 10,000 years ago comes out and starts running after us, then we need to react to that. And so it's not normal. So the body wants to be able to maintain all its resources so that it can be ready to for flight or fight at any moment. So if it needs to run or if it needs to fight, it wants to be ready for it. So it's always wanting to find the easiest way possible to do something. So what happens is now we start exercising, and after exercise we get these serotonins get released. All of a sudden now we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we've got 15 little serotonin neurotransmitters. They're all filling this space. And the bouncers, you can imagine, they're getting a little bit scared. They're like, oh man, it's a popular night tonight, yeah. And they're trying to let people in, they're trying to let them in. The neurotransmitters are knocking on the door, yeah, we want to come in, They're going, yep, we're getting you in as quick as we can. And then you keep doing it, and you keep exercising, and all of a sudden you do it every day, 5 days a week, and you're not used to that, and then you get this, and then you keep doing it, you keep doing it. What you're doing is flooding this space with this serotonin, which is a good thing. But the cell on the other side has only got so many receptor sites. So what happens is the cells are always listening into what your body is doing, listening into what you're telling it through your behaviours, your thinking, feeling and behaving, and it's going, and it's adapting. It is always adapting, but there's a bit of a lag time. So you can't just make a door. Imagine, we say, you know what, we've actually got a heap of people coming here, we need more doors in here. It takes work. We have to knock out parts in the wall, we need to install doors. It takes work to install these little receptor sites, receiver receptor sites. And so what happens in response to that? It does do it. It does. It goes, oh, yeah, we're doing it. Just give us some time. There's actually as it's doing that, what happens, what the the word is, but what the byproduct of that is the cell starts to actually shake. So let's just pretend this is a neuron. And so this is the arm of it, this is the head of it. It starts to physically shake. And this is what these chemists won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for, is that they discovered that it actually, the cells, receiving cells, create new receptor sites on the receiving side. And in response to that is the cell actually shakes while it's doing so. And people interpret that shaking of the cell, which you can't feel, it's so tiny, but you can. It's like a gut feeling. That's when people say, like, I had a gut feeling. The thing they say, it just didn't feel right. It's not for me. Exercise is not for me. I can't. It's too hard. I can't do it. And when that usually occurs, how long that usually takes? 3 to 4 weeks. And when do we see most people drop off in terms of the creation of a new routine? 3 to 4 weeks. If you make it, it's not happening after a week. If it's after a week, that's motivation. If it's after a month, that's physiological. And if it's after that, well, it just means a change in priorities of what your goals are, what your desires are, and all that kind of thing. So there's nothing we can really do about that, but understand it. And if we understand this is what's going on at a cellular level in the body, it helps you to know, okay, well, I need to put some stuff in, some strategies in place first to be able to overcome that. And so if you go through this whole process of looking at understanding what a routine and a habit is, and you're working your way through the ecosystem of routine, so hacking your environment and making sure that the house is set up with good healthy food, clothes for exercise, make you want to go and exercise, easy habits they're easier to slip into, they're efficient, so you're...
I thought of another one. I put the chocolate not in a place in the fridge that's small immediately.
Yeah. So that's hacking your environment to make it more difficult to do that, yeah. And so if we then go through and we understand all that stuff and we create our new routines through following the ecosystem, the 4 E's, and then we then go through the order of E's for any behaviour change. So continue doing what you're doing, do more of those things which you're already doing, and then start new behaviours. Then as we start behaviours and we've got that momentum behind us and some motivation, we've already got our bucket nice and full and we've got our tap ready to go to fill it up as we start to... Here, this is an example of tipping water out the bucket. So this is not the first, but it's one of the very big ones in the beginning of being able to get through that challenge. If you can overcome that challenge, you're well on your way to creating exercise as a habit. And remember, a habit is a trigger, a behaviour, a reward. And so what then happens is, because now you've now got a cell down here which has all of these receptor sites on it. So what happens when you take a 2-week holiday to New Zealand, like somebody's doing at midnight tomorrow night, and you are used to having all these little serotonin things going, flooding the body on a regular basis, on a 5-day-a-week basis, then they're going to be going, dude, what happened? What's going on? Like this, and you get a desire to want to exercise. So either you enjoy your holiday and you take it. 2 weeks is probably that point where you're probably going to want to be doing. A week is probably alright. You're probably not going to really feel it in a week. But in 2 weeks, you're probably going to be going, man, I just couldn't wait to get back into my normal routine. I guarantee you're going to say that.
Are you going to put thoughts in my head?
This is actually installed for you. We're all here. This is all set up to make sure you don't fall off track. So now your cells are expecting that serotonin rush throughout the body on a regular basis. So then, you hear people say, I just couldn't wait to get back into my routines and wanted to keep doing, because our body likes homeostasis. It likes knowing what's expected of it. So taking a break on a regular basis is great to get away so it doesn't become monotonous. It keeps us on our toes and makes us feel good and happy. But we also love to be able to get back into our normal routines and our habits. And so when you come back, it's going to feel funny, and that's a different part of the body. That's now muscular and skeletal that we're talking about. So coming back after 2 weeks and exercising, you feel a little bit clunky, a little bit not very rhythmic in your movements, or very coordinated, because the muscle fibers are all learning to sort of work again. They're all getting used to going again because you're now getting that blood flow through the body. But in terms of the nervous system, it's loving it. It's like, oh man, here's all these people that we made these doors for. Thank goodness we didn't over-capitalise on our investment of this property. We just put new doors in. And so that's what's going on. So if you go through all that stuff, get that done, you then create. It's very, like, this has been extremely complex. I've gone just started late, so just about an hour that I've rushed through it. But that's how you get on track with your health and fitness goals, using psychology, using an understanding. It's not just psychology, because that is just the mind, but also using biology, understanding the physiology of change. So, are there any questions?